I took the job because my brother died owing money to people who don't forget debts. The foreman's email said the position paid triple standard dock rates for night shift work at a freight terminal on the Bering coast. No experience required. Housing included. Start immediately. I arrived on a Thursday afternoon in late September. The bus from Anchorage took 11 hours, the last 3 on gravel roads that carved through tundra the color of rust. The terminal sat on a concrete pier that jutted 200 yards into gray water. 3 warehouses, a fuel depot, a crew house painted industrial yellow. Behind it all, black spruce forest pressed close enough that I could see individual branches swaying. The foreman met me at the crew house door. His name was Petrov, 60s, maybe older, with hands that looked like they'd been broken and healed wrong multiple times. He didn't shake my hand. "You're the new night handler," he said. Not a question. "Yes, sir." "You read the posting. Triple rate. 4 nights a week, 10 hours per shift. You handle incoming cargo, log manifests, secure containers. You work alone." "Understood." He handed me a key ring with 12 keys, each tagged with faded tape and numbers. Crew house, warehouse 3, fuel shed, equipment locker, perimeter gates, and the rest. Don't lose them. Replacements take 6 weeks. Inside the crew house, he showed me a bunk room with 4 beds. Mine was the one nearest the radiator, a locker, a bathroom with a shower that dripped. The kitchen had a propane stove, a refrigerator that hummed too loud, and a radio mounted to the wall above the sink. "Day crew works warehouses 1 and 2, Petrov said. "You work warehouse 3 exclusively. It's the north building. Cargo comes in by boat between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m., sometimes every night, sometimes once a week. You'll hear the horn." "What kind of cargo?" "Equipment, supplies, scientific instruments for research stations up the coast. Some of it's temperature sensitive. Some of it requires specific handling. You'll get manifests with each delivery." He walked me across the yard to Warehouse 3. The building was corrugated steel, no windows, 1 main door facing the pier and a side door facing the forest. Inside, the space was divided into 3 sections by chain-link fencing. Yellow sodium lights hung from the ceiling on long cords. The concrete floor had drains every 20 feet. "You'll stage cargo here," Petrov said, pointing to the nearest section. "Logging station is there. Radio is there. Keep it on channel 4. Day supervisor is Victor. He'll check in at 6:15 a.m. You respond with your shift code November 7 and your cargo count. Clear?" "Clear." "You have a phone?" "Yes." "It won't work here. Tower's 100 miles south. Radio only." He looked at me carefully. "You're punctual? You follow instructions exactly?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Your first shift is tonight. Be at Warehouse 3 by 7:45 p.m. There's a briefing document in the office. Read it twice. Memorize it. Questions?" I had a dozen questions. I asked the obvious one. "Why do I work alone?" "Because that's the position." He handed me a laminated badge with my photo. They'd pulled it from my driver's license application and the number 73. "Wear this clip to your chest. Visible at all times. If someone on the pier doesn't have a badge, you don't acknowledge them. You don't speak to them. You radio Victor immediately." "Understood?" He left without another word. I spent the afternoon unpacking my duffel and trying to sleep. The radiator clanked. The refrigerator cycled on and off. Through the window, I watched the day crew moving pallets between warehouses 1 and 2. They wore orange vests and worked in pairs. At 5:30 p.m., they climbed into a van and drove south toward the road. At 6 p.m., the terminal was silent except for wind and the rhythmic slap of water against the pier. I made instant coffee and walked to Warehouse 3 at 7:30 p.m. The briefing document sat in a plastic sleeve on the desk in the corner office. 8 pages typed with handwritten amendments in the margins. The header read Night Cargo Operations Standing Protocols. I read it once, then I read it again. The rules were specific. 1. Report to Warehouse 3 no later than 7:45 p.m. Confirm all exterior doors are locked. Confirm interior lights are functioning. If any light is extinguished and cannot be restored by replacing the bulb, radio Victor immediately and wait for instructions. Do not proceed with shift operations. 2. At 8 p.m. exactly, unlock the main door and open it fully. Secure it in the open position using the iron hook mounted to the left of the frame. The door will remain open until 6 a.m. Do not close it for any reason unless instructed by Victor via radio. If the door closes on its own, exit through the side door immediately and radio Victor from outside the warehouse. 3. Cargo deliveries arrive by boat. You will hear 3 short horn blasts. Proceed to the pier. Verify the vessel matches the manifest description. Verify the crew is wearing company badges. If the crew is not wearing badges, do not approach the boat. Return to Warehouse 3 and radio Victor. 4. Unload cargo using the electric pallet jack. Transport cargo to the staging area in Warehouse 3. Do not stack containers more than 4 high. Do not store cargo in sections 2 or 3. Section 1 only. 5. Log each container on the manifest sheet. Record time of delivery, container identification number, and weight if provided. Place completed manifest sheets in the gray lockbox on the desk. Do not leave manifests unsecured. 6. Between 11 p.m. and 11:15 p.m., the perimeter lights will shut off automatically. This is normal. Do not attempt to restore them. Do not leave Warehouse 3 during this interval. At 11:15 p.m., the lights will restore. If they do not restore by 11:20 p.m., radio Victor. 7. You may hear tapping on the warehouse exterior between midnight and 3 a.m. Do not investigate. Do not open the side door. Continue working. If tapping occurs on the main door frame, step back from the door and count to 60. The tapping will stop. If it does not stop after 60 seconds, radio Victor. 8. If you see a figure standing on the pier between the warehouse and the waterline, verify it is wearing a badge. If it is not wearing a badge, do not make eye contact. Return to Warehouse 3. If the figure follows you inside, exit through the side door and radio Victor. 9. Do not enter the forest. Do not approach the tree line closer than 50 feet. If you see movement in the trees, note the time and return to Warehouse 3. Include this information in your end-of-shift report. 10. At 3:30 a.m., conduct a perimeter check. Walk the exterior of Warehouse 3 clockwise, starting at the main door. Verify all windows are intact. Verify the side door is locked. Verify no objects are stacked against the walls. If you find any objects stacked against the walls, do not touch them. Radio Victor and return to the warehouse. 11. If the radio emits static between 4 a.m. and 4:30 a.m., change to channel 7 and wait. Victor will contact you. Do not transmit during this interval. After contact is made, return to channel 4. 12. At 6 a.m., close and lock the main door. Confirm all cargo is logged. Place manifest sheets in the lockbox. Secure all equipment. Radio Victor on channel 4 with your shift code and total cargo count. Wait for his confirmation before leaving Warehouse 3. 13. If at any point you feel the floor is wet, stop working immediately. Verify the source of moisture. If the floor is wet and no source is visible, exit through the side door and radio Victor. Do not re-enter Warehouse 3 until Victor gives clearance. 14. Do not bring food into Warehouse 3. Do not bring personal electronics. Do not play music. Do not fall asleep. Violations of these rules will result in immediate termination without pay. The handwritten amendments were sparse. Next to Rule 7, someone had added in blue ink, "Count out loud." Next to Rule 10, "Carry flashlight, check corners." Next to Rule 12, "Exact count, double check." I folded the document, returned it to the sleeve, and checked my watch. 7:51 p.m. I confirmed the exterior doors, both locked. I counted the overhead lights, 18 in total, all functioning. I unlocked the main door at 7:58 p.m. and waited. At exactly 8 p.m., I opened it fully and secured the iron hook. Cold air poured in from the pier. The yellow lights inside the warehouse created a boundary between the interior space and the darkness outside. I could see 40 feet of concrete pier, the edge of the water line, and beyond that, nothing. The radio on the desk crackled. "Warehouse 3, this is Victor. Confirm shift start." I pressed the transmit button. "This is November 7, shift start confirmed, 0 cargo on site." "Copy November 7, delivery expected at 2200 hours, remain on channel 4. "Copy." I spent the next 2 hours organizing the staging area. I tested the electric pallet jack. I inspected the chain link sections. I read the manifest log from the previous night shift. 3 containers delivered at 10:32 p.m. Containers weighed between 400 and 600 pounds. Identification numbers logged clearly. No notes, no amendments. At 9:45 p.m., I heard the first tap. It came from the left side of the warehouse, metal on metal. 3 taps, evenly spaced, then silence. I checked my watch. Not yet midnight. Rule 7 specified between midnight and 3 a.m. I returned to the manifest log. At 10:30 p.m., I heard 3 short horn blasts from the water. I walked to the main door and looked out. A boat was approaching, lights on, moving slowly toward the pier. It was a flat-deck vessel, maybe 40 feet long, with a crane mounted amidships. 2 crew members visible on deck, both wearing orange vests. I couldn't see badges from this distance. The boat tied off at the pier. The crew lowered a ramp. I walked down to meet them. Both crew members wore company badges, numbers 41 and 58. Neither of them spoke. The one with badge 58 handed me a manifest sheet. 4 containers. Total weight 2,200 pounds. Delivery time logged as 22:43 p.m. I brought the pallet jack down to the pier and loaded the first container. It was a gray plastic case, 6 feet long, 2 feet wide, secured with nylon straps. The identification number was stenciled on the side. TC 88491. I transported it to the staging area, logged it, and returned for the second container. The crew worked efficiently. No conversation, no eye contact. By 11:05 p.m., all 4 containers were staged and logged. The crew pulled up the ramp and untied. The boat's engine rumbled and it reversed away from the pier, lights fading into the dark water. I returned to Warehouse 3 and placed the completed manifest in the lockbox. At 11:07 p.m., the perimeter lights shut off. The darkness outside the main door became absolute. The yellow lights inside the warehouse seemed dimmer by contrast. I could hear wind moving across the pier. I could hear the distant sound of water. I stayed at the desk and waited. At 11:14 p.m., the perimeter lights restored. I resumed organizing the staging area. I checked the chain link gates. I confirmed the side door was locked. At 11:58 p.m., I heard tapping again. This time it was louder, rhythmic, metal on metal coming from the left exterior wall. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Pause. I checked my watch. Midnight exactly. I stepped back from the wall and began counting out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4. The tapping continued. 15, 16, 17. I kept my eyes on the manifest log. I kept counting. 41, 42, 43. The tapping stopped at 56 seconds. I waited another 30 seconds, then returned to the desk. My hands were steady, but my pulse was loud in my ears. At 1:15 a.m., I heard the horn again. 3 short blasts. I walked to the main door. Another boat. Same size, same configuration. 2 crew members, both wearing badges. Numbers 19 and 62. This delivery had 6 containers. Total weight 3,100 pounds. I worked quickly, loading and transporting each container to the staging area. The crew remained silent. By 1:53 a.m., the boat was gone. I logged the containers and placed the manifest in the lockbox. At 2:30 a.m., I saw movement on the pier. A figure stood near the waterline, maybe 70 feet from the warehouse. It was shaped like a person. It was not moving. I could not see a badge. I stepped back from the main door and returned to the desk. I did not make eye contact. I focused on the manifest log. When I looked again at 2:34 a.m., the figure was gone. At 3:30 a.m., I conducted the perimeter check. I took the flashlight from the equipment locker and walked outside through the main door. The perimeter lights were functioning. The air was cold enough that my breath fogged. I started at the main door and moved clockwise. The left wall was clear, no objects, no damage. The windows were intact, small, high, reinforced glass. The rear wall faced the forest. The tree line was approximately 60 feet away. I could see the silhouettes of spruce branches moving in the wind. Nothing else. The right wall was clear. The side door was locked. I tested it twice. I returned to the main door and walked back inside. At 4:17 a.m., the radio emitted a burst of static. It lasted 5 seconds, then stopped. I checked my watch. 4:17 a.m. I changed the radio to channel 7 and waited. At 4:19 a.m., Victor's voice came through. November 7, confirm position. I pressed transmit. Warehouse 3, 10 containers staged, no incidents. Copy, return to channel 4. I switched channels. The rest of the shift passed without event. At 6 a.m., I closed and locked the main door. I double-checked the manifest count, 10 containers. I placed the manifest sheets in the lockbox and radioed Victor. This is November 7, shift complete, 10 containers, lockbox secured. Copy, November 7, clear to depart. I walked back to the crew house in the dim pre-dawn light. The day crew van was already pulling into the yard. Victor climbed out older than Petrov, with a gray beard and a limp. He nodded at me but didn't speak. I slept until 2 p.m. The second night followed the same pattern. I reported to Warehouse 3 at 7:45 p.m. I unlocked and opened the main door at 8 p.m. The perimeter lights shut off between 11 and 11:15 p.m. I heard tapping between midnight and 2 a.m., always stopping within 60 seconds if I counted aloud. 2 deliveries, 7 containers total. At 3:30 a.m., during the perimeter check, I found something stacked against the rear wall. It was a coil of rope. Green nylon, approximately 30 feet long, piled neatly against the corrugated steel. I did not touch it. I returned to the warehouse and radioed Victor. This is November 7, found object during perimeter check, rear wall, please advise. Static, then Victor's voice. Describe object. Rope, green nylon, 30 feet approximately. Do not touch. Continue shift. Will address at 0600. Copy. At 6 a.m., Victor arrived before I locked the main door. He walked to the rear wall with a pair of heavy gloves, picked up the rope, and carried it to a trash barrel near the fuel depot. He poured something from a metal can over the rope, then lit it. The rope burned with thick black smoke. All clear, he said when he returned. Your count? 7 containers. Good. Report anything else you find. Don't wait until end of shift. Understood? He drove away in the van. The third night brought heavier wind. I could hear it pressing against the warehouse walls, a low, sustained howl that made the overhead lights sway slightly on their cords. At 9:30 p.m., I heard footsteps on the pier. I walked to the main door and looked out. A figure was approaching the warehouse. It was wearing an orange vest, no visible badge. I stepped back inside and waited. The figure reached the main door and stopped just outside the threshold. It was shaped like a man, average height, wearing a vest and jeans. The face was shadowed. I could not see details. It did not speak. It did not move. I counted to 60 silently, then walked to the side door, unlocked it, and stepped outside. I radioed Victor from the exterior of the warehouse. "This is November 7, unbadged figure at main door, requesting instructions." Static. Long pause. Then, "Did it cross threshold?" "Negative, standing outside. Do not re-enter, wait." I waited in the cold for 8 minutes. The wind pulled at my jacket. I could hear the distant sound of the forest moving. Victor's voice returned. "November 7, walk to crew house. Stay inside. Do not return to warehouse 3 tonight. Day crew will handle." Copy. I walked back to the crew house, locked the door, and sat in the kitchen until dawn. Petrov arrived at 7 a.m. He didn't ask questions. He handed me an envelope with cash 4 nights' pay, triple rate as promised. "You followed protocol," he said. "You did the right thing. Tonight you'll have a new amendment to the briefing document. Read it carefully." "What was it?" "Doesn't matter. It didn't cross the threshold." He poured coffee from the propane stove. "You're doing fine. Most people quit after the first week. You haven't quit. The money's good." "Yes, that's why you're here." He looked at me carefully. "Your brother's debt, how much?" 18,000. "You'll clear it in 3 months. Maybe sooner if we get winter surge. You'll work extra shifts." "I'll work them." He nodded. "Good." That night, the briefing document had a new page. Amendments to Standing Protocols 1. If a figure in an orange vest approaches Warehouse 3 without a visible badge, do not engage. Exit through the side door immediately and radio Victor. Do not assume the figure is day crew. Day crew does not work between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. under any circumstances. 2. If you hear knocking on the main door frame distinct from tapping on the walls, count to 60 out loud. Do not look directly at the door during this count. If the knocking continues past 60 seconds, exit through the side door and radio Victor. 3. During perimeter checks, if you observe lights inside the forest, note the time and distance. Do not approach closer than 50 feet to the tree line. Report lights in your end of shift summary. Do not investigate further. 4. If the radio emits a voice that is not Victor's between 4 a.m. and 4:30 a.m., do not respond. Change to channel 7 and wait for Victor's voice. Confirm identity by requesting shift code verification. Victor will respond with copy November 7. 5. If you find cargo containers moved from their logged positions in the staging area, do not reposition them. Log the discrepancy and radio Victor immediately. Do not attempt to restage containers until cleared by Victor. 6. If the overhead lights flicker in a pattern 3 flickers, pause, 3 flickers, stop working immediately. Stand near the main door and wait. Lights will stabilize within 2 minutes. If lights do not stabilize, exit through the side door and radio Victor. I read the amendments twice. I memorized the new rules. At 8 p.m., I opened the main door. The wind had calmed. The night was clear enough that I could see stars above the waterline. The shift began normally. 1 delivery at 10:15 p.m., 5 containers. I logged them carefully. At 11:42 p.m., I heard knocking. It was distinct from tapping, sharper. 3 slow knocks on the main door frame. I stepped back and began counting out loud. 1, 2, 3. I kept my eyes on the manifest log. 21, 22, 23. The knocking continued, slow and steady. 47, 48, 49. At 58 seconds, the knocking stopped. I waited another full minute before resuming work. At 1:20 a.m., the overhead lights flickered. 3 flickers, pause, 3 flickers. I stopped moving immediately. I walked to the main door and stood near the threshold. The lights flickered again, same pattern. Then they stabilized. I counted 2 minutes on my watch before returning to work. At 3:30 a.m., during the perimeter check, I saw lights in the forest. They were faint, yellowish, maybe 100 feet into the trees, moving slowly from left to right. I stopped at the rear wall and watched for 30 seconds. The lights moved in pairs, low to the ground, like flashlights carried by someone walking hunched over. I noted the time, 3:37 a.m., and returned to the warehouse. At 6 a.m., I radioed Victor. This is November 7, shift complete, 5 containers. Lights observed in forest at 0337, approximately 100 feet in, moving left to right. Copy November 7, did lights approach tree line? Negative. Good, clear to depart. The pattern continued. 4 nights a week, 10 hours per shift. Deliveries varied, sometimes 1 boat, sometimes 4. The smallest delivery was 2 containers, the largest was 14. I learned to recognize the sound of the boats before the horn blasts. I learned to count seconds precisely without checking my watch. I learned to identify which taps came from wind vibration and which came from something else. The rules became automatic. Lock doors. Open the main door at 8 p.m. Stage cargo in Section 1 only. Count out loud when tapping occurred. Exit through the side door if necessary. Conduct perimeter checks clockwise. Log everything. On my 16th shift, I found a second object during the perimeter check. It was a jacket, blue canvas lined with fleece, folded neatly against the right wall of the warehouse. I radioed Victor immediately. This is November 7, found object during perimeter check, right wall. Blue canvas jacket. Do not touch. Continue shift. Will address at 0600. At 6 a.m., Victor burned it in the same trash barrel. On my 19th shift, I heard a voice during the 4 a.m. radio static. It was not Victor's voice. It was higher, younger, and it said, November 7, confirm position. I did not respond. I changed to channel 7 and waited. At 4:03 a.m., Victor's voice came through. November 7, this is Victor, verify shift code. I transmitted. November 7, shift code verification requested. Copy November 7. I returned to channel 4. On my 22nd shift, one of the cargo containers had moved. I had logged it in the front left corner of the staging area. Container TC 90217, delivered at 11:51 p.m., weighing 700 pounds. At 2:15 a.m., the container was in the center of the staging area. I radioed Victor immediately. This is November 7, container TC 90217 moved from logged position, no personnel in warehouse, requesting instructions. Do not reposition, log discrepancy, continue shift. Copy. At 6 a.m., Victor arrived early again. He examined the container, checked the identification number, and used a hand truck to move it back to the front left corner. Normal, he said. Happens sometimes. You did right. What moves it? Floor settling. Vibrations from the water. Doesn't matter. He looked at me. You're through 3 weeks. Petrov says you're reliable. You want to stay on? Yes. Good. Winter surge starts in 2 weeks. You'll work 6 nights instead of 4. Same rate. More containers, bigger boats. I'll do it. He nodded. You're smart. You follow rules. That's what we need. Winter surge began on schedule. The temperature dropped. Ice started forming along the edges of the pier. The boats arrived heavier, slower, loaded with containers that required 2 trips with the pallet jack. I worked 6 nights a week. The deliveries increased. Some nights brought 20 containers. Some nights brought 30. The rules expanded. Petrov handed me a 3rd page of amendments. Winter Surge Protocols 1. Ice will form on the pier between midnight and 5 a.m. Walk carefully during cargo transport. If ice accumulates to a depth greater than 1 inch, radio Victor for sand distribution clearance. 2. Boats may require de-icing before crew can disembark. Do not board the vessel to assist. Wait on the pier until the crew is ready to unload. 3. If you observe cargo containers covered in frost that was not present during transport, do not touch the containers. Radio Victor and wait for instructions. Do not attempt to remove frost. 4. During heavy wind events, the main door may partially close despite the iron hook. If the door closes more than halfway, exit through the side door and radio Victor immediately. 5. If you hear voices in the forest during perimeter checks, note the time and return to Warehouse 3 immediately. Do not attempt to identify the source. Report voices in your end-of-shift summary. The work became harder. My hands cracked from the cold. My boots developed a permanent layer of ice on the soles. The pallet jack's battery drained faster in low temperatures. I carried a backup battery in my jacket. On my 31st shift, I heard voices during the perimeter check. I was at the rear wall facing the forest. The tree line was dark and still. Then I heard someone speaking. A man's voice, calm and conversational, coming from approximately 70 feet into the trees. I could not make out the words. It sounded like a normal conversation, someone talking to another person, pausing, responding. I noted the time 3:41 a.m. and returned to the warehouse. At 6 a.m. I included it in my report. Victor confirmed receipt and did not comment further. On my 34th shift, a container arrived covered in frost. It was the third delivery of the night, logged as TC91804, weighing 900 pounds. When I transported it to the staging area and turned on the work lights, the entire surface was covered in white frost. It had not been frosted during transport. I had touched the container while loading it onto the pallet jack, and it had been cold but dry. I radioed Victor. This is November 7, container TC91804, frosted in staging area, not frosted during transport, requesting instructions. Long pause. Then, do not touch. Move to Section 2, use gloves. Do not allow frost to contact skin. I put on the heavy rubber gloves from the equipment locker and moved the container to Section 2 using the pallet jack. The frost did not melt under the warehouse lights. At 6 a.m., Victor arrived with a second crew member I had not seen before. They loaded the frosted container onto a flatbed truck and drove it toward the fuel depot. Victor returned 20 minutes later. You're doing fine. Keep following protocol. What happens to frosted containers? They get processed separately, not your concern. By mid-December, I had worked 43 shifts. I had logged over 600 containers. I had found 4 more objects during perimeter checks, 2 coils of rope, a tarp, and a pair of work gloves. Victor burned each one. The tapping continued between midnight and 3 a.m. The lights in the forest appeared irregularly, sometimes close, sometimes distant. The figures on the pier became more frequent. I saw one standing near the waterline at least twice a week. I never saw badges. I never made eye contact. On my 47th shift, the main door closed. It was 1:36 a.m. I was logging a container in the staging area when I heard the scrape of metal on concrete. I turned and saw the main door swinging inward, closing despite the iron hook. It closed halfway. I dropped the manifest sheet, walked quickly to the side door, unlocked it, and stepped outside. I radioed Victor from the exterior of the warehouse. This is November 7, main door closed halfway. Exiting per protocol, requesting instructions. Do not re-enter. Walk to crew house. Wait. I walked across the yard in the freezing wind. My breath came out in sharp clouds. I could see lights in warehouse 1 and 2 where the day crew equipment was stored, but no movement. I sat in the crew house kitchen and waited. At 2:07 a.m., Victor's voice came through the radio. November 7, return to warehouse 3, main door will be secured. Resume shift. I walked back. The main door was fully open again, the iron hook properly engaged. I resumed logging containers. At 6 a.m., Victor did not ask about the incident. He confirmed my cargo count 18 containers and cleared me to depart. On my 50th shift, Petrov gave me an envelope with a bonus, $3,000 cash. "You've worked 2 months without incident," he said, "and that's rare. Most handlers last 3 weeks, some last 3 days. What happens to them? They quit, they break rules, they don't follow protocol." He poured coffee. "You follow protocol, that's why you're still here. The rules work." "Yes, they do." He looked at the envelope. "Your brother's debt. How much is left?" 9,000. "You'll clear it by February, maybe sooner." He sat down across from me. "After that, you can stay on if you want. We'll need night handlers through spring. Same rate." "I'll stay." "Good." The coldest nights came in January. The temperature dropped to -15. The boats arrived with ice coating their hulls. The crews worked in insulated suits, moving slowly, their breath visible even under the perimeter lights. I added layers: thermal base, fleece, canvas jacket, waterproof shell. My gloves had chemical hand warmers tucked into the lining. The pallet jack required 15 minutes of warming before the motor would engage. On my 61st shift, the overhead lights flickered in the pattern. 3 flickers, pause, 3 flickers. I stopped working immediately and walked to the main door. I stood near the threshold and waited. The lights flickered again, then again. 2 minutes passed. The lights stabilized. I returned to work. At 3:30 a.m., during the perimeter check, I saw something moving near the tree line. It was large, shaped like a person but too tall. It moved from left to right along the edge of the forest, approximately 80 feet from the rear wall. I noted the time, 3:34 a.m., and returned to the warehouse. At 6 a.m., I included it in my report. Large figure observed at tree line, 0334, moving left to right, distance 80 feet. Victor acknowledged. "Copy. Did it approach closer?" "Negative." "Good." On my 68th shift, I found cargo containers rearranged. I had staged 6 containers in the front left corner of Section 1. At 2:45 a.m., all 6 containers were in the rear right corner. I radioed Victor immediately. "This is November 7. 6 containers moved from front left to rear right. No personnel in warehouse, requesting instructions. Do not reposition. Log discrepancy. Continue shift." "Copy." At 6 a.m., Victor arrived with 2 crew members. They moved the containers back to their original positions using hand trucks and pallet jacks. They worked quickly without speaking. When they finished, Victor turned to me. "You've been here 11 weeks. You've seen things. You followed rules. I'm going to tell you something important. You listening?" "Yes, sir." "The cargo we handle isn't normal. The place we work isn't normal. The rules exist because someone figured out how to operate safely. We don't know why the rules work. We just know they do. You follow them, you survive. You break them, you don't. Understand?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Keep doing what you're doing." By February, I had worked 79 shifts. I had logged over 1,300 containers. I had seen lights in the forest 42 times. I had seen figures on the pier 61 times. I had heard voices in the forest 19 times. The rules had expanded to 23 core protocols and 14 amendments. I knew them all by memory. On my 83rd shift, Petrov handed me another envelope, $12,000. "Your brother's debt is clear," he said. "Paid in full, confirmed by the creditors." I opened the envelope and counted the bills, exact amount. "You did it," Petrov said. 3 months, most people can't. "Thank you. You earned it." He poured coffee. "Now you have a choice. You can leave, walk away, go back to Anchorage, or you can stay. Same rate, same shifts, but now you're working because you want to, not because you have to." I thought about the crew house, the warehouse, the pier, the boats arriving in the dark. I thought about the tapping and the lights and the figures and the rules. "I'll stay," I said. "Why?" "Because I'm good at it." Petrov smiled. Yes, you are. On my 91st shift, I trained a new night handler. His name was Devin, early 20s, quiet, nervous. Petrov had hired him to cover the secondary warehouse during surge operations. I walked him through the briefing document. I explained the rules. I showed him the equipment, the radios, the lockbox B continue, the perimeter route. You'll work warehouse too, I said. Same protocols, same rules. Main door opens at 8 p.m., stays open until 6 a.m. You log every container, you follow the amendments. You radio Victor if anything happens that isn't covered by the rules. What happens if I don't follow the rules? You won't last. He looked at me carefully. Have you ever broken a rule? No, not once. Not once. He nodded slowly. Okay. That night I worked Warehouse 3 as usual. Devin worked Warehouse 2. I monitored Channel 4. I heard him radio Victor twice, once to confirm shift start, once to report a delivery. At 3:30 a.m. I heard him radio again. His voice was tight. This is November 8, found object during perimeter check, left wall, green tarp, requesting instructions. Victor responded. Do not touch, continue shift. Will address at 0600. Copy. At 6 a.m. I saw Victor burn the tarp in the barrel. Devin lasted 4 shifts. On the 5th night he didn't show up. Petrov didn't explain. He hired another handler 2 weeks later. By March I had worked 107 shifts. The ice began to melt. The boats arrived cleaner, faster. The deliveries decreased slightly as the winter surge ended. I had saved $22,000. On my 112th shift, I wrote my own briefing document. I typed it on the old computer in the crew house office. I included all 23 core rules. I included all 14 amendments. I added notes in the margins, small details I had learned through repetition. I printed 3 copies and placed them in plastic sleeves. Petrov read it the next morning. This is good, he said, unclear, precise. You've learned the job. I've learned the rules. Same thing. He handed me the document. When we hire the next handler, they'll read this, your version. You're the senior night operator now. What does that mean? It means you train new hires. You maintain the protocols. You report to me and Victor. You get a 20% raise. I'll do it. He nodded. I know you will. I'm still here. It's late April now. I've worked 134 shifts. The days are longer. The boats arrive less frequently. The forest is green again, and I can see individual branches swaying in the wind. Last night during the perimeter check, I found a jacket folded against the rear wall. Black canvas, lined with fleece. I radioed Victor. He arrived at dawn and burned it. Normal, he said. I know it is. Tonight I'll report to Warehouse 3 at 7:45 p.m. I'll unlock the doors. I'll confirm the lights. At 8 p.m. exactly, I'll open the main door and secure the hook. I'll wait for the boats. I'll log the containers. I'll count out loud when the tapping starts. I'll conduct the perimeter check clockwise. I'll radio Victor at 6 a.m. with my shift code and cargo count. The rules work. I follow them. That's why I survive.